with Malcolm and Tom, and they are in Toronto, and they got married a couple years ago, just almost 2 years ago in Victoria. And I wanted to ask you how you two first met.
Yeah, it's either a long story or short story. We met in residence in first year university at McGill. And yeah, I don't actually remember like the first time I saw you, but I feel like you remember the first time you saw me.
That's key to our story, is that it was like the second day of residence, and there was this party going on in the basement as like a get together, to try to get all like the nervous first years to interact. And I went down there and I saw this sort of, well, not sort of, handsome guy in the corner, running a drinking game, with, of course, pretty much like the only life in this like really awkward party was this little corner, with this like very like extroverted loud guy, playing a drinking game. And I moseyed my way over there, and got into the drinking game, got into the card game, and was pretty smitten from like the start, thinking that hey, this guy's like pretty good looking and like pretty cool. I think university is going to be pretty sweet. But Tom doesn't remember that time. That he has no recollection of that. So that was the first time that I met Tom.
Yeah, and then like Malcolm he was just like a floor below me, but I guess I was like very drawn to you without like consciously knowing it, because I quite quickly like found myself like wrapped up in your friend group and like following you wherever you were going, kind of somewhat unconsciously. I think I was having like I had a very difficult time in first year. I think kind of a classic story of a lot of people in first year university. You're like detached from, your support system. And I was putting all this pressure on myself with grades, and the effect was just kind of like I was isolating myself. And Malcolm had this like way of, well, in different ways, like pulling me out of that. Like in one way, he was like really smart, and so he was like helping me with my grades in my school, and I was like, okay, I can get this under control, okay. And then another way, he was also like this social butterfly who was like, making the most out of first year, that classic experience that like you're supposed to have, and he was kind of like pulling me out to the fun events. And so I found a lot of like, I don't think I like respite or like reprieve in hanging out with Malcolm. And so I think I like kind of kept getting drawn to the sort of like light that I felt like he gave off.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when was your first date?
A long time later, Jane, a long time later. Yeah, Malcolm was like initially like very, I think, you knew you had a crush on me, like pretty early, am I right?
Yeah.
Day one, yeah.
Met from day one.
It's pretty accurate. And was it received?
Well, it's complicated. It's more complicated than was it received or was it not received. I had just come out after high school, and I had a lot of like, I was very emotionally immature, I think, and I had a lot of like internalized homophobia and I was just like very guarded. I was very like protective of like not letting people in and like the vulnerability that would come with that. And so as much as I was like emotionally drawn to Malcolm, as much as I was like, yeah, he's cute, I also was like, had all these like boundaries up, and I had them up with everybody. And so I think that was quite difficult for Malcolm, because it was like, why wasn't something happening? Why wasn't it working? But I just like kept drawing these boundaries because I didn't know how to like navigate them, which I think is a story for quite a few like queer people, is that, when a lot of people get to try out those like relationships and like practice and develop those skills, like they get to do it in high school. But if you're queer and you're not out in high school, you don't really get that same opportunity. And so I think I didn't get that same way to practice with all those like feelings and emotions. And so I was just kind of like, let's just be friends. I only want to be friends because that's just like way easier.
Right. So when did it finally happen? Like,
Well, first year university, we were doing a very romantic thing, and we were playing Call of Duty together, as boys do.
what
It was
is
just
Call of Duty?
Call of Duty is a video game where you shoot zombies.
Okay.
We're playing zombies. Yeah. Your younger listeners will definitely know Call of Duty. And it was just Tom and I, and one thing led to another, and Tom ended up kissing me that night, and it was our very first kiss. And you know, I was so excited that the next day I ran into my best friend's room really early in the morning. I like barged in, and I was shaking. I just like had to tell someone that, you know, I just kissed Tom, the guy that like I've been like hopelessly pursuing for like a full year. And I was so excited. I was like, this is the blossoming of our beautiful relationship together. But then we didn't talk about it, Tom and I, for basically like a year.
That's a full year?
A full year. Didn't talk
That's
about.
indicative of my emotional state, I think. Yeah.
It was like this.
It's like avoid.
It was basically this like, yeah, this thing that was always between us, but that it was just like unspoken. But I don't think it got in the way of like our friendship, because shortly after, Tom asked me to move in with him and some other friends going into second year of university. So we were really good friends and really good roommates together, without that like that romantic.
Yeah, we could really just like ignore the things that were ignored, which is great for the convenience of it, as Malcolm was hoping that I would eventually come around to be a mature human being. Then the second semester of second year, these timelines are so long. I did an exchange, and so I had to go away. And when I went away, I like felt these like very intense like missing pangs for Malcolm for the first few days, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, what is my body trying to tell me? Maybe I should listen. But I'm gone for the next few months, so who cares? And then like I come back from that place, and I learned that Malcolm's got a boyfriend while I was away, and I was like, oh, okay. Also, very emotional reaction to this. How do I deal with this? And, you know, we had kind of been getting a lot closer that semester that we lived together. I was maybe getting a little bit more mature, I would like to think. And eventually it was kind of like this like thing turned to be, and I was like, this is stupid. Why am I not just trying? Like, who cares like what vulnerability looks like? Let's just give it a go. And thankfully, like, Malcolm was in a place that he let me do that. we got to like kind of explore what that possibility just looked like, and it was like very transformative right off the bat for me. Like, Malcolm had kind of had this experience like dating somebody else, and I think that gave you a bit of maybe even more maturity than you had before. And I just like immediately felt like open and cared for, and I don't know, excited and invigorated by this vulnerability that I'd been like afraid of for so long. Yeah, I just remember feeling like very alive, very like energized, and very just like happy. I was like, oh, this is a good step to take. Yeah, and I think I had like maybe talked myself out of like that possibility for a long time, because it was scarier. It was another step that I wasn't used to, and so like taking that step, and what I guess I really perceived as a huge risk, and then feeling like somebody met me there was it was really really powerful moment for me.
Nice. And so all you had to do, Malcolm, was get a boyfriend.
Apparently, that is the trick.
This is the piece of advice I give everyone. If you're into someone, don't pine after them for a whole year. Go after someone else.
That's the effective strategy.
That's all you had to do. So then he was interested in you. You had to ditch the other guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had to make a good first impression too. That was important, I think. Was it?
Oh yeah. Malcolm was like like the thing that I noticed about Malcolm more than anything is he's just like such a like generous spirit. He was just like there to help anybody, to like to be there, to be that like amazing friend, to be that just like person to talk to. And I just feel like, yeah, I don't know, like kindness can feel like a bland word, I think, but like I just felt like you just like emanated kindness.
Compassion even. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then you did start to date. And so I mean, one of the questions I always like to ask people is, when did you know that this was the person for you, like for the rest of your life? Like, when did you know?
Oh my God, that's a good question. I feel like I probably went back and forth a little bit in the first couple of years.
Oh man. I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, great. Gosh, for me, like it's kind of like always. That sounds like a little cheesy, a little sappy, but like in that like infatuation period of a year, it obsessed is like, that's a strong word, but it was close to obsession. Like I didn't think about anyone else more than I thought about Tom, and I never got as excited about anyone except for Tom. And like that was both in a romantic sense, but also in like a friendship sense. Like Tom was the person who helped me come out to my family, which was like super important and like a keystone in my life. He got me to pinky promise to come out to my family the next day when they were visiting Montreal. And even as awkward as I knew it was going to be in the car, I wasn't worried that they weren't going to love me, but I was nervous about the feelings around it. I had Tom's voice in my head pushing me and egging me forward. So I did come out to them that day. Maybe Tom had some ulterior motives for getting me to come out, but so Tom has always been like a keystone in my life. So I think even before we were like romantically together, it always felt like he was the one.
Right. So I mean, I do hear that a lot. Like some people will just see, like they'll just know it'll be, you know, the drinking game in the corner, and that's it.
That's love at first drink.
Love at first shot. And so,
Yeah.
Tom, when did you know?
I think for me it's more complicated. I think like, you know, I had this very, you know, just like cautious thing in the back of my head, and I think it stemmed from a lot of like things from being younger, but it was just like, don't want to be hurt, like don't want to put myself out there too much, so I didn't want to like for a long time think about like committing to for a long time, because I just wanted to, I think I associated that with like being hurt or being disappointed, I guess. So I wanted to be like free and independent in some ways, even when we were sort of starting that relationship. So it took me a while to come around, and then, you know, I mean, there was like so much like passion and feeling and emotion like early on that it was like, wow, this is it. And then I think there were times that, you know, when that kind of lowers, you're like, okay, when we have like a lot of like interpersonal dynamics that we need to work through, and we all have like, we have our vulnerabilities and like the insecurities that like keep coming up in a relationship. And I think initially like we weren't particularly good at dealing with those, or we were kind of like figuring it out, and like sort of, I think I knew that like this is the one, like, which sounds maybe more pragmatic and less romantic, but like when we started figuring out how to do that, and we started like being able to lean into the uncomfortable conversations, and like when we were annoying each other, we could like work through it. And when I started to see that, when I started to know that you were committed to doing that, and I knew that I was committed to doing that, it kind of felt like, well, if we're both committed to making this, you know, the best relationship forever, then what can stop us? Because we're committed to it. And it's not necessarily that it's like super easy, but it's like we're gonna do it, and we're gonna meet each other there and be what we need to be for each other. Yeah. So I think it was more like figuring out those dynamics that like gave me the sort of sense of security to really relax into it, and to know that it was like the long-term thing.
And when you knew that, I mean, because you were more cautious, you're much more cautious. And you're,
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I would never like, profess early love.
Oh, okay.
Except I kind of did for you. So, so you did really pull me out of my shell. Thank God for you. Otherwise I might still be just like guarded in a corner.
Okay, well, so then, okay, now what about the proposal?
The proposal.
Like,
I told Tom from the bat that he has to propose to me.
that he
Yeah.
mostly had to propose to you, yeah.
Yeah, mostly because I wanted a proposal. I just wanted to be the one proposed to. So I put that in Tom's court.
I
I was like,
mean,
you have to do this romantic thing for me. Thanks.
yeah. And like you probably picked up on it, like I was more certain, the Malcolm would say yes, but Malcolm wasn't me. So it was like kind of I had to come around to it when I was feeling ready. So the proposal was actually very fun to plan. Once I did come around to it, I just kind of planned a day. It was Pride weekend in Toronto, so there was a lot of like fun, energizing events. There were a lot of like people out in the streets celebrating queer love, and so we went out and we celebrated that. We went to a couple of different like marches and went to a couple gay bars, just like had fun in a relaxed way, and then got a fancy little dinner, got some cocktails, came back, and our roommates had kind of set up this area in this, I don't know, what do you call it?
Outdoor gazebo.
Kind of like a gazebo type, like backyard thing that we had in our place at the time, and you have different like plants and candles and whatnot, and I took Malcolm back there and I read him a poem that I wrote him about what he meant to me, and the last line of the poem was, "Will you marry me?" And he said yes, of course, thank God.
Through the bubbling tears. Yeah.
He was crying. It was very sweet.
Yeah, a personalized poem after like an amazing day. I didn't think I wanted a big proposal until I got a big proposal, and then I was like, this is the best, and I would have it no other way.
And I took a bit of a gamble because I thought he would say yes.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of our like mutual friends were like in the house hiding and like ran out and like were there to celebrate popping champagne. So we got to like make a party out of it.
Yeah.
Nice proposal job. I'm impressed. That's really good.
It was pretty sweet.
It was fun.
What can I say? I'm worth it.
Yeah, he is.
Have you ever experienced any discrimination? And the reason I ask that is because even now, which I mean, to me, I didn't think it was a big deal anymore, but people are afraid to tell their love stories. They're just really, I guess, because of backlash. I don't know.
I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we've both been like very fortunate in the sort of like families that we've been raised in. I think for me, it's not so much that I experienced like outright discrimination, but I think I've internalized a lot of messages that I received from media and from, just from being kids and about the sort of like the right way to be and the sort of person that you want to be. And I think those mostly things I've worked through and I feel like very confident on now. But I think if that's sort of what I think about is like, what are the sort of like spaces that we're like welcome to walk down the street and hold hands, or what do I have to like think twice about like who's looking, or what they're sort of like whispering to each other about. So it's not even necessarily that I know that that's true, but it's the sort of ways that those have gotten to my brain, so I can't not think about them in times that I just like would like to not think about them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I think I've noticed since like we've both been wearing wedding rings that, especially in my job as a nurse and working with many different people and many different work settings as well, whenever I've worn the ring, I find that people ask like, "Oh, you're married," and that leads into a conversation. And I really noticed, especially when I was a nursing student too, that a lot of spaces didn't feel like it was a safe place to be able to have that conversation. A lot of hospitals are religious affiliated. A lot of there's a lot of like conservative staff as well in some places that I've been. So it's kind of weird to have this symbol that I love and that expresses my commitment and love towards Tom, but then have to think twice about wearing it in a professional setting. Which is I it's a constant conflict with me too, that like I feel like I should be more loud and proud, and I should be really forcing those conversations no matter what setting. And then the other half is like, oh, but like, these are often sick people that I'm working with, and that, they don't always have to be confronted with my personal views and everything. Right. So it's hard.
It's hard sometimes. Yeah, to find that balance between, do I want to take on this fight all the time?
Yeah, and you can surround yourself with people that love and accept you, but you're constantly interacting with people on the other outside of that, and so exactly. You're making all these assumptions and judgments and about what they're comfortable with, which be nice if we didn't have to do, and maybe we don't have to do it, but it's right in there.
It's in your head, exactly. All the time now.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question for you. So now then you got married, and I know you got married in Victoria, and a question for you: what is your wisdom to other couples?
Oh, that's a good question.
Any advice or things that you like to share, like if you were going to send some advice?
I feel like my wisdom, it sounds like, yes, I'm going to call it wisdom. Wise. I think I'm very wise. I think that's something that I see in the world or in society around narratives around love is that I would say most couples I know are uncomfortable talking about challenges in their relationship, even with their friends, that there's a real sort of expectation that when you talk about your relationship, you're kind of like your pair and you're figuring out your stuff, and you don't want to like let people know like any challenges. And I think that could be a really disservice, because I think it gives the message that relationships are always super easy, and that they don't involve work, and that challenges mean that something is wrong and you need to break up with somebody. And I guess from my relationship, from other people in relationships that are close to us who are open, I think I've learned that it's not the fact that you have challenges that is an issue. It's like how you move through those and how you sort of work together to figure those out together. And so I think, I don't know, I try to like talk about our challenges with other people like openly, and like recognize that that's like an okay thing to do. And so I think my wisdom is that it's not necessarily easy. In fact, relationships are really hard, even when you're deeply in love, and that's okay. And it's about sort of whether you can like work together to figure that out.
Yeah, and everybody, I mean, people have been married 38 years. They say, look, it's not easy. It's
right.
A choice, but they do, they do certain things. Yeah. So I think recognizing that, there's going to be challenges.
Yeah. And I like, you were talking about like different phases of love. Like I imagine as we grow older together, that we'll have another phase of love that more and more challenges will come up and we'll work through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other side of it too. Like, it's just, I have grown so much personally as a result of this relationship with Malcolm, as a result of like the way that Malcolm has supported me. I think relationships have the power to force you to like search in yourself with your insecurities, and force you to like unpack those, because you just are so like emotionally invested and tied up with somebody else, and things do get triggered. And I think that's like the really powerful growth aspect of relationships, if you're willing to go there, is that you can just like be transformed and be just so much more comfortable and knowledgeable about yourself through this like other person in your life, which is like something I'm just so grateful for you to sort of like help guide me through that.
Take that risk.
Yeah. Take that risk.
Take that risk and and let yourself be vulnerable. I mean,
Exactly. The trust
Yeah.
fall in a
yeah, the
relationship.
trust fall, exactly. Do the trust fall with your partner. I think you've got to have that for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and I
Oh my
can't
God, yeah, thank you.
wait to see you again here in Victoria.
Yeah, me too. So soon.
I'll just
Big home.